A naval conference, the first of many, I hope. And here we've even got people from overseas territories like Guernsey. What's your name?
A donkey, yeah.
What's your name?
Karen Blanchford. I'm the Executive Director for the Guernsey Disability Alliance, the GDA.
Right, which has been going in a few years in various forms.
Yes, that's right.
Appears from here to be very successful. Is it in fact very successful? Things happening in Guernsey?
Well, very successful in getting a strategy through. So the Disability and Inclusion Strategy was unanimously agreed in November 13. It's stalled a bit, unfortunately not due to resources meaning money, but resources meaning capability and capacity.
People, now that really amazes me, because there's stacks of people I went off studying years ago on accessibility.
Yeah, not stacks of people with disability law experience, unfortunately, or any discrimination.
Lawyers, falling down on the lawyers.
Not necessarily lawyers, so we're talking about policy writers,
right.
But people obviously that can work with the lawyers and work with people to form a policy letter. The policy
right.
letter then goes to the states, and once that's agreed, then that's enacted.
How are you doing on the other discrimination issues? Have you got a package of all these things?
Yeah. So our policy, or the disability or state's disability and inclusion strategy covers many things. Autism
right.
framework's been agreed. We've got a children's information website set up. When I say we, that's the states, not us as the charity. GDA is a charity. So what we're doing is we're campaigning for the legislation, campaigning for
right.
access to information,
right.
Campaigning for access in its physical form as
right.
well. And we have a new charity in Guernsey now called Access for All,
right.
and that specifically looks at the physical environment, so obviously ramps, lifts, etc. But also
Jersey, after much campaigning, signed up for the rights of the child last year,
yeah.
But not a lot of evidence that anybody's taking any notice of it. Have you signed up for it in Guernsey, do you know?
Rights of the child,
yeah.
I think we're wording it quite differently, or differently over there. So
right.
We have a number of policies in place, one of which is what we call CYPP, or strategies, I should say, Children Young People's Plan. We have a member charity called Wigwam that's working with the states on that and implementing the work streams that go with that.
Right.
That and a number of other policies around ageing well at the moment are requiring resourcing for them to kick off. They've started, but like with anything, you need the resources.
Well, I noticed when I was over there, I was covering your last election.
Okay, yes.
And I noticed quite a few candidates were wearing a disability badge. In other words, they were giving support, and obviously your campaign had endorsed them. Now, I don't know how many of them got elected.
We didn't endorse anyone.
No?
We had hustings, and that's what the rosettes were. So we had 94% of the standing electorate. Sorry, I'm trying to remember what they're called. Proposed candidates came to our hustings, where we partnered them on like a speed dating with people with disabilities from all areas. So hearing, learning disabilities, physical mobility, and they went around and basically spoke to disabled people to get an understanding of their issues. Obviously there were candidates that we know have great experience, we've worked with them before, and others who don't. So I wouldn't say we endorse anyone, but we're certainly encouraging everyone to take a closer look.
It's made them more aware. So
absolutely.
Are any of them speaking on these issues in the States?
Yes, at the moment there's a very big issue around education. In fact, it's happening as we speak. But yes, and of course it takes many forms.
And is disability much of an issue in the education debate?
At the moment it's not brought into it, so it's secondary education, and they've chosen to leave Le Maurier and the special educational needs schools out of that debate. So no, not for that debate, but many others. So we're looking at transport policies you and I have talked about before. We've looked at the environment. We've looked at the moment in Guernsey we're starting a new project which is states audit. So we heard Professor Lawson talk about duties for public service.
Is that an audit of facilities as well as
the public? So the civil servants. So the buildings owned by the state.
All the buildings.
And the processes.
Because I've been asking for that for years over here. They should actually audit the buildings.
Well, unfortunately, I don't think they're going to get a full audit. We have a company that works with the states in Guernsey called Disabled Go. It's a UK company. They come over and they audit restaurants, cafes, hotels. So you can go online and find out, are they accessible? Is there accessible toilets, etc. What the states have committed to, and I have to say, I think we're very happy with this project, is to start the auditing process. That doesn't just include physical, but are your recruitment policies fair? Are your or other policies, procedures, and the physical environment? Yeah.
I've got a particular bug in my head about the changing places toilets.
Okay,
Jersey
yes.
Airport hasn't got the main port hasn't got them.
Okay, same with
there
us
are
at the
many
minute.
tourist facilities here where they don't have them.
Okay. Oh, interesting. We're just starting. So
Right.
changing places is a fresh thing. We just started talking again about a couple of weeks ago. It's come up before. One thing we are doing with St Peter Port Dusain at the moment, who are leading this, is we're doing a badge that will go up like a kite mark that will go up in stores in St Peter Port that will say our toilets are either accessible for children changing places, but baby change, for disabled people, or for the public. So in St Peter Port we really struggle with public toilets. So people are starting to do things. Businesses, the constable's office is starting to do things. But we have a long way to go.
The issues are not new issues, are they?
No,
They've been around forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
And we can talk about them forever and ever and ever. We had a very good speaker today with a huge amount of knowledge on all these sorts of issues.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, how do you actually get people to be aware? Because every year they go out with their red poppies. Oh, isn't it sad? People got their arms blown off.
Well, the good thing I would say, let's take the constable's office. A year ago, there's no way they would initiate this.
Right.
So I'm looking for people to initiate projects. Initiate projects that will make a difference. So, for example, we've had restaurants asking Accessible to come and do reviews.
Right.
We've had hotels doing the same. The fact that other people, the election team were excellent at asking us what could they do differently. So we did a practice polling for people with disabilities. We had larger print. We had better colour contrast. We gave advice about manifestos, about larger print, again, colour contrast, etc. So I definitely say things are starting to change. Are they going at a pace that is fast enough? Obviously, we'd love it to be going quicker.
Even this meeting, there was no signer here today. Now, a meeting like this in the UK would have a signer.
Yeah.
It'd be hard work to sign for 3 hours, I know.
It's about changing behaviour, isn't it? Yeah.
But do you ever find that in Guernsey? Do you have to use signers?
But for example, the theatre company, which was run by Resident Crispini, they did one afternoon matinee session that was not signed, had subtitles, and they subtitled it. Just one, but that's the start.
The Opera House here does employ a signer sometimes for some presentations. I don't know
Yeah. So the key is to start that process.
Of course, you've got a big Jersey. St Helier should be no problem. It's a relatively flat town.
Yeah.
St Peter Port is a bit of a nightmare.
It is. It's very hilly. It's got lots of cobbles. It's slippery. A lot of the buildings are very narrow, thin. So getting lifts in would be hard. Doing things like steps up into buildings is quite difficult. It is difficult, but it doesn't mean it's impossible.
No, indeed not. And obviously there are the other parishes. It's not all St Peter Port.
That's a really good point. So what we understand what we call reasonable adjustment. What we're struggling is when people do new builds and they don't have accessible toilets. The aisles are too small. Right. The print is too small for people to read. The audio, it's noisy. The lighting is poor. So when we talk about disabilities, remember it's very, very wide. A lot of people still think wheelchairs.
Absolutely.
No, we're thinking about lighting. We're thinking about sound. We're thinking about many, many other things.
The States, you've got a civil servant who's employed on some issues. I've never quite understood, but it's not an access officer.
It's a disability officer, and the disability officer works for now in Guernsey. It's moved to employment and social security. The disability officer is involved in the disability and inclusion strategy. They mostly do things around the information and awareness, but they're also proactively involved on the board, which is for the legislation, the audit that I mentioned earlier. So they've got a very diverse area. They don't do the policy letter, the legal, and that's a resource in Guernsey that we've lost for 18 months. So we've had a big stall in our legislation for 18 months. We're hoping in the next couple of weeks that new resource will be employed. So then we'll be very happy. That means a policy letter should get to us this year.
It's clearly one of those issues which the islands could work together on.
It clearly is, although we have quite a different attitude to it. So that makes it interesting. Jersey's ahead of us in all the other areas like age, race, religion. Guernsey only has discrimination legislation around sex, and only in employment, not in anywhere else outside of employment.
Of course, depending on what happens after Brexit, we might be be closer together, or we might be further apart?
Well, I'd love to think about the Channel Islands. I mean, I'm here today in Jersey. Bronwyn and I work closely. I work closely with John and Jim. So, you know, we do work together. We share information. But at the moment, we have two different governments and two different discrimination agendas. So you use CAB, Citizens Advice Bureau, for information. We've talked about an equivalent of an ERO, Qualities Rights Organisation. But more and more, I think we share information, we share research. And obviously today, but I was really delighted that 3 or 4 months ago, Bronwyn mentioned that Professor Lawson was coming. And so again, that's another sharing. So she comes to Guernsey tomorrow.
Funding, have you got adequate funding for all these things?
No, but who has? So that is difficult. The same as it is getting staff and resources in the third sector. It's not common practice to have paid staff in the third sector in Guernsey, not like UK or Australia. So getting funding for that is very difficult. And then funding, obviously, for the strategy itself is more difficult as well.
Okay. Do you come up for election yourself? Do you have to be re-elected, or are you in?
No, I'm in a contract position.
Right.
Yeah, so that contract runs for 2 years,
right.
And then we need funding, obviously, for that. But obviously other roles as well. But as I say, all charities are struggling, in that area at the minute.
Indeed, they are. You haven't got a charities commission like they're proposing here?
We do. We're sort of, sorry. So we have an Association of Guernsey Charities,
right.
which registers the charities
right.
and distributes the lottery funding.
Right.
But then we also have something called the Guernsey Community Foundation. I think that's similar to what you're saying. So I can't ever say the word, but they work with philanthropists.
Right.
I can never say that word. That's my dyslexia. And they work with them for donations that then work towards distribution. My role is funded through the Guernsey Community Foundation, as are a number of others.
I should have to end now, but when I'm next in Guernsey, if you show me a few good things...
There's